This is World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with your host, Karl Gruber. World Awakenings is a podcast dedicated to opening your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, and just how they play an all-important role in our daily life. So join Karl on this enlightening experience as he interviews metaphysical and spiritual experts to discuss, debate, and delve deeply into the hows and whys of this worldwide awakening.
You've seen and read my 3 Pillars ebook, and now I'm proud to announce my new book, True Spirituality and the Law of Attraction, a beautiful symbiotic relationship, and it's now out and ready for reading. This new book of mine is a full-length version of the teachings of the 3 Pillars, and in it I show you how to walk in the integrity of eternal universal laws, in step with the law of attraction to consistently create the life you desire. Now, if you've ever wondered just why you can't consistently manifest all the good, loving, abundant, healthy, and happy things you desire, my new book, True Spirituality and the Law of Attraction, will reveal the key in how to do just that. Plus, help you build a rock-solid personal foundation that will stand strong for the ages. Get your copy today. My new book, True Spirituality and the Law of Attraction, a beautiful symbiotic relationship by Karl Gruber. Available now in ebook and paperback on Amazon.com. Welcome to the podcast World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment. I'm your host, Karl Gruber. Now, this show has a mission, and that has been for over 4 years to find an answer to the all-important question, why now, more than ever, are the people of the world awakening to all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening? Now, to help us find this answer, we've had some of the world's top teachers, authors, experts, spiritual icons, masters, and yes, even some ascended masters on this show. Now, before we meet our guest for this show, please take a moment to click the link below to get your copy of my new book, True Spirituality and the Law of Attraction, a beautiful symbiotic relationship, now available on Amazon as an ebook or paperback. So let's meet our featured guest for this episode, Lisa Tahir. She is a licensed clinical social worker, in addition to being a certified level 1 in EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, a Reiki level 2 master, a thought coach, and founder of the field of psychoastrology. She is the author of the book, The Chiron Effect, and host of her own very popular podcast, All Things Therapy. So Lisa, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to be on the show. And I think I pronounced everything right.
Karl, thank you so very much. You did. And I want to congratulate you on your new book. Seriously. And I look forward to reading it.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And we're going to definitely talk about your book and all the amazing things you do. And all I can say is, doing my research about you and the things you do, all I can say is, holy mackerel, Lisa, you have an amazing amount of talent, certifications, and a passion to help the people of the world to live a happier, healthier, more joyful life. But how did all of this come about in your life? You started off your adult life as a social worker, correct?
I did, Karl. And I've come to learn that we're here to experience joy. And that was never something I was taught as a young person. I entered therapy as a client when I was 21 to unravel some of my childhood experiences that I knew left me feeling wounded and not with the adequate skills to have healthy love in my life. And I really wanted to fire on all cylinders as much as possible. And I had the awareness to know that I needed some help with that. And it was through my own experience in therapy as a client that I knew this is what I want to do with my life, to help people learn how to be happier, how to be healthier, especially with themselves. I was taught that so much in our lives is for others. And I found myself giving so much without replenishing, without receiving. And so in my years now, more recent years, really learning to allow myself to receive and to really understand and feel what that experience is, to give more to myself, learning that we truly give our best from our overflow versus from a place of depletion, just like gritting it out. And so I'm really about, it makes me so happy, Karl, to teach people and be an example that you can be joyful and you can really have everything you want. I know you're a law of attraction teacher, and there are laws in this universe that are here to serve us and to help us once we align with those truths and those fundamentals that exist with or without us, much like the law of gravity. It is operating whether or not you know that it is. And I've made myself a student of the laws, and my life has gotten so much better. And I'm happy to be here with you.
Yeah, and by the way, anybody watching this, that's Lisa's personal assistant on her lap. What's your cat's name?
This is Smelly Cat. Yes, my assistant. She loves being in all of the Zoom videos. She just, yes, thank you for calling her out.
Smelly Cat. All
Smelly
right.
Cat.
Well, like I said, my cat Maya Diva might join us here too. So, but I'm just curious too, because I did read a lot of your stuff, and your parents found a note from you when you were 5 years old that said, "I want to be a psychiatrist." 5 years old, huh?
That's true. I appreciate you reading and remembering that. And at first that always made me laugh. And then I started to think, well, that's a little disturbing, like a 5-year-old wanting to be a psychiatrist. And why would I even know about that at such a young age? But I came from a very medical family. My father's a physician. My mom was a psychiatric nurse. And so I certainly heard about psychiatrists and psychologists super early on. And I knew they had something to do with healing. And I've always been really curious about how I can make my world a better place. It's been like a natural gift within me, and learning how to use that again in a way to harmonize the balance between giving and receiving, having come from a background of being the giver and not receiving, feeling unworthy, even, Karl, of that. And my book is how I sought to answer, to really put those pieces together. Why is it that I'm so successful in some ways, yet in others not? And the not was in not letting it in, not feeling connected to my success, and that being sourced within a wounding within myself around my value and worth, my self-value and my self-worth. And despite all the therapy and healing I had been through, there was something missing. And I turned in meditation to ask the universe, what is this? How can I help myself and clients really with something that hadn't quite come together for me? And that's when I heard Chiron, Chiron, in the image behind you, designated both as a comet and a minor planet in astronomy. Chiron in astrology points to a placement in one of the 12 signs that illuminates an area of vulnerability and core wounding within us. For some of you, it might be vulnerability, like an ouch. And for others, like with me, it was more of a deeper wounding, a sense of really, neglect, abandonment, something that really was painful for us, that kind of set a tone in our lives that we started to live from. And it was so important, I learned, to heal this aspect of ourselves. And I want to pause to just check in with how that lands with you.
Well, and one thing that struck me a little while ago, you talked about unworthiness, and with I have found as a life coach, a law of attraction life coach, that one of the universal traits of almost every client I've ever worked with is unworthiness.
Mm.
It's almost universal that people don't feel worthy of having their greatest dreams, their greatest goals come. The common thing is, oh, I'll never have that. Nobody in my family had that. Why should I have it? And so that's pretty amazing that you note that. But too, so is this unworthiness attached to this quote, what you talk about, core wounding that each of us have?
Well, and it depends, Karl, on which core wounding, up to and including vulnerability, because it is on a spectrum. For some of you, it is a deeper core wounding in your sense of selfhood and how you relate to your world. And for others, again, it might just be vulnerability. It literally might be just an ouch. Like, there's an area that it's not too troubling, and you may have already healed it through your work, especially if you're in the healing arts and the healing professions, in a way that you're serving others. I've seen that people naturally start to heal this Chiron placement through their work and giving back. And so it doesn't have to be necessarily something so big and so all encompassing, but for others it may be. And again, for me, I was the person really successful, but I didn't allow myself to feel successful, having to do with like deserving to take up the space I've created. And I've since learned that you are the most valuable person in this universe. And so is the person next to you. And I think if we lived from more of that awareness of just how important we are a very unique emanation that is only particular to you yourself, me, myself, and you, Karl, and just how important that is, how valuable you are. And when we start to really feel into our significance, it's when we do start to magnetize and attract to us everything we want. Even if no one in your family's had it, for me, the most exciting phrase I added to my life has been, why not me? Why not me? It has to be someone. Why not me?
Yep.
And start to really play with words. Words are truly our thoughts in clothing. I quote that from either Ernest Holmes or Charles Haanel, where they talk about thoughts are creative, and our thoughts are creative. Our emotions reveal to us where we are on that path of living the life we want or a life that we don't want. And I know you know this through understanding principles centered around the law of attraction. It's so much there to really help us when we apply ourselves to the information and the knowledge.
That is so cool that you mentioned author Charles Haanel. I don't think a lot of people know him. He wrote the Master Key System.
I have it right here, the Master Key System. I read it almost daily.
Back in the early 20th, I don't know, like 1915 or 1912, he wrote it. And, as people like you and I know about it, but I still don't think, even after all this time, it's like one of the most knowledgeable, known books.
I appreciate that you know his work as well. I speak about Charles Haanel and the Master Key System frequently and often. It's been a life changer for me. It's been a real game changer in understanding life and the principles at play that masters have harnessed for their health, their wealth, their success, and to be of the greatest impact on our planet, which is my intention to be. And I really commit my memory and time to aligning my mind with the universal mind as is taught, and like magical things are happening as a result.
Wow, that is just so awesome. But I do want to go back because I'm absolutely fascinated by this. You're the founder of something called psychoastrology. What is that, and how did you come about developing it?
Karl, I love words. One of my favorite books besides the Master Key System is the dictionary. And so in speaking with a friend, we were talking about astrology and psychology and came up with psychoastrology. It's simply combining those two things where your birth chart astrology meets your personal psychology. And it's just fun to create words. I love doing that. So it came from that experience and conversation with a friend. And what I'd really love for people to understand, because it took me a while to get this, I used to resist astrology because I thought it was predetermined in the stars, for instance, written for me. And I've learned, no, we wrote our own chart. And it's a symbolic language of the life that we designed ourselves to live on Earth. And by understanding some of your astrology. For me, it's just Chiron. I'm not an astrologer. I'm a psychotherapist, and I combine the astrology of Chiron with personal responsibility, psychology, and spirituality in my book, so that you can really use all of these languages to help yourself heal from your wounds. So you're not resisting them. So you're not pushing them down and away because they've been too painful. Yet you create all of these things in your life that are undesirable and painful because you haven't healed those wounds. And I want you to know how approachable healing can be, and that it can be easier and more joyful rather than painful.
You know, I'm going to be honest. I mean, I've never really been into astrology hugely, and many of my colleagues, like you, are completely into it and practice it and understand it. So, I mean, this is as simple a question as possible. The cosmos has a magnetic effect on what we do, think, and say. Is that the bottom line of how astrology works?
That's not how I see it. I see it as astrology was founded and designed by ancient peoples to understand our natural world, that they were really good at harmonizing. You know, they planted crops at certain times based on what they saw in the sky. Since they didn't have all the technology that we have through computerization, they developed their own. And it still stands up today. The things that they discovered about the cycles of the moon and planting and harvesting. And so to me, you don't have to believe in astrology. There's actually nothing to believe in. It's just a symbolic language to help us understand patterns. And we as humans are really fond of our patterns. We love patterns. It's how we feel safe in the world. To meet someone and it's like, oh, Al is X, Y, and Z. We kind of like size people up within just a few seconds. And that's a pattern. It helps us feel safe. It helps us feel like we're able to manage the people, places, and things in our world. And we call that our daily routine. And in my book, I talk about that, about how our daily routine are the people, places, and things we habituate. It's our mini solar system. And we are little planets, and so are others in our lives. And we orbit and habituate those people, places, and things based on what we believe in our mind is true for us. And our truth that we make into our belief system can only go as far as our largest limiting belief. Like that's your glass ceiling. And so for me, it's like, I really want to remove all these thought barriers and limitations. Like you mentioned, Karl, no one else in my family has done this. Why should I? And it's like, that's a bullshitty thought. You know, when you look at it, just because no one's done it in your family, people have done it in other people's families. Like everything's a possibility when you start to say that it's so. And it's about, who do I have to become to fulfill this dream that I have? What do I need to think? What do I need to believe? What actions does that then inspire me to take to then manifest what I most want, instead of by default, limiting myself because someone said I can't? And there's all of this patterning that we have to unlearn. And then we can choose to think thoughts that support us. And my book addresses all of these topics that we're covering and subjects. What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, I love the fact that you made the analogy that individually we're like our own solar system with planets orbiting. And it really is true if you think about it. Yeah, that's pretty phenomenal.
Thank you.
No, I'm glad that you clarified that on astrology. Like I said, I mean, it's not my forte, and anything that you can offer me is a big help in helping me to understand it more. Thank you.
No, you're welcome, Karl. And even His Holiness the Dalai Lama, when he endorsed this book of mine, he wrote in the more full letter that I got from him that he's not a student of astrology. He's a Buddhist scientist. However, the principles that I've sourced from compassion, forgiveness, utilizing meditation, and really allowing ourselves to be connected to one another through our likeness versus our different than our difference really is how we heal ourselves and humanity. So I think astrology doesn't have to be a stumbling block. Chiron is also sourced in psychology. Carl Jung spoke about Chiron as the wounded healer archetype, the parts of us that have all experienced suffering, that we're united in that way, that everyone has somehow experienced a suffering and a wounding, and that Chiron is about that. As well as in Greek mythology, Chiron is the founding father of the healing arts, of botany, and of medicine. And every time you go to the doctor today and you see that staff of medicine with the two snakes intertwined, Chiron gave that to Asclepius. He tutored Asclepius in Greek mythology. So we actually see references of Chiron daily in our lives. So it's so much bigger and more than, I think what a lot of people know, and there are not many books written on it, in fact, yet. I know there will be. And mine is the first to combine psychology with the astrology of Chiron and bring personal responsibility into it and spirituality. So I feel really proud about that.
Wow. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. I've had a chance to read a little bit of your book, but I need to read the whole thing. How did you get the Dalai Lama to endorse your book?
I utilize meditation and setting an intention that it is my deepest desire for His Holiness to endorse my book. And I saw that the path had to do with me just sitting in meditation every day, asking, who do I need to become to receive the endorsement of His Holiness? And I started to feel in the quietness of that meditation time, well, Lisa, to you, he represents human compassion. Like, how are you being compassionate to others? And I could check off, like, I'm really compassionate to those that I love, which is easy. But I started to think about, when I'm frustrated, when my internet goes down and I'm on the phone with AT&T for 45 minutes to an hour, I'm not the most compassionate person. And I heard the universe say, you need to clean that up. And so I started to practice being more kind at the grocery, not being on my phone, like asking the person checking me out, like, how are you? What's going on? Like really being present. And over a 2-year period of kind of like even forgetting about the endorsement, it was there, but I was like, I'm on this journey to it. Like I knew I had to become a person that the Dalai Lama would even open the email out of probably the tens of thousands that he receives. And I knew this was more than just like in the 3D here and now, send an email, get a reply, because I did that and it didn't work. I heard nothing. So I sought to meditate and align myself, becoming the person, becoming the woman to receive this endorsement. And at the end of about a 2-year period, I was in meditation and I literally heard in my mind, His Holiness say, send me your book. I want to read it. So I sent a new email sharing with His Holiness how I sent an email 2 years ago, didn't hear anything. And I knew it had to do with where I was in my growth and development. So I sought to meditate and change. And I heard, be more compassionate, be more in the moment. And I said, I feel ready, to ask if you would consider reading my book. And Carl, it was less than 2 weeks. I got the most beautiful letter of endorsement from him, as well as I sent him a gift, some handmade glass art. I received another email. So it's like the channel was opened because I opened that part of me to connect with, with that experience I wanted to have.
Well, I hope one day that you get to have an audience with the Dalai Lama.
I feel like I will. I feel that. Thank you.
That is awesome. So, I do want to go back and talk a little bit more. Your book, The Chiron Effect, Healing Our Core Wounds Through Astrology, Empathy, and Self-Forgiveness. So what exactly is a core wound? And do we all have some kind of core wound?
We all have an area of vulnerability that we source our patterns from. And in 1914 or 15, Sigmund Freud coined that as the repetition compulsion. It's a theory accepted in modern day psychology and psychotherapy, where we source our patterns from the template of our childhood, from our caregivers. And we tend to carry that forward unconsciously often into our adult love relationships, business associations, and friendships. And then object relationists later spoke about this, is the patterning from our early life experience informs and affects our adult relationships. So core wounding, it's been called the source fracture by my colleague, Catherine Woodward Thomas, and it's been called these different terms to identify these kind of pain point experiences that we've had in relating to other human beings and being rejected, being abandoned, feeling unseen, unheard, unimportant. It might be a disconnection from feeling like you really know where you belong in the world. There's so many different aspects that this vulnerability on one side of the coin and core wounding on the other can show up. But the commonality is that it causes you to feel badly about yourself. And then you start to edit yourself. You start to like work around these vulnerabilities and wounds so that you're not showing them to others because you might feel ashamed or embarrassed. And that actually makes your life smaller rather than larger because you're compensating for something you feel like is wrong with you instead of we all go through experiences that affect us and sometimes hurt our feelings. And it's when we really learn to love that part of ourself that was hurt, that was wounded, that we can be our full self. And that's what my book shows you is how to really forgive those parts of yourself, which will help you be able to forgive others at the right time. That forgiveness is really for you. It's to really look at how you feel like you've harbored hate and resentments and shame and criticism towards yourself, thinking that's going to make you change. You know, we think by like beating up on ourselves, we're going to change, but it's really through being more compassionate and loving and kind. What do you think about that?
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I mean, we all need to do that. I was thinking as you were discussing, you know, the core wound and that type of thing is, it's so much a part of our unique 3D human experience. You know, we've come here for a journey of awakening from those core wounds. And as far as I know, as far as I understand from my studies, it may not all happen within this lifetime. I mean, my understanding is that we go through multiple lifetimes of healing and healing and healing until we finally get it right. Do you agree with that?
You know, what I've been shown, Karl, which has been so exciting for me, is that timelines are running simultaneously.
Yes.
It's all now. And
Mhm.
just because we're in this physical finite body that we can only process kind of like one timeline that we're in right now, our 3D world. It's hard to imagine, you know, because we don't necessarily have the ability to see physically all the timelines running simultaneously, but I think we can feel into them. And I think that's why it's been called past lives, future lives, because that's like on our human understanding. We see life as past, present, and future. But to imagine it's all simultaneous, it's all right now is really powerful. And to start to feel into that, play with that we can actually shift our timelines. And that's what really a manifestation is we're shifting our timeline into a more desirable one that's actually happening now. What do you think about that?
And that's beautiful. You point out that because you know I think that's a mind blower for especially anybody new to this thought system that all things are simultaneously instead of being on a horizontal plane where you know things happen one after the other. There's just now. And if somebody would say, "Wait a second, you mean?" I'm an emperor of Egypt right now, but I'm also a homeless person on the streets in New York City right now at the same time. But you know, there's the power of now, like the Eckhart Tolle
Yeah.
book, and then there's A Course in Miracles that calls it the Holy Instant. You know, it
Yes.
really is now, and which makes it a vertical plane of right now. But it is a concept that is hard for
It's
our
mind bending.
yeah, it really is. And you know what? Our minds need bending.
They do, Karl. And I love, because for me, I've thought the same thing. Like, because I've felt in the past, I've had past lives in Egypt, and I'll sit and I'll be like, oh my gosh, like right now that's happening. But there's the Egyptian ruins that you can go visit right now if you want to. Like, how does that all make sense? And it's just, you know, we're in this physical body that sees, you know, and feels this one experience, but there's actually, it's all happening. It's just so, it's still bends my mind, and I want it to. Like, I want to have the awareness of more timelines and how to work with that, how to really play with that for life to be more fun and powerful and enjoyable, and help people understand kind of like how powerful we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you know, that's another great point too, because when I speak to people, whether they're a client or just in casual conversation, most people have no clue what their divine, true, inherent power is. I mean, we're beyond anything. I mean, we're one with all that is,
We
and
are.
that's power. That's
It
the ultimate
is.
power.
It is. Absolutely, Karl.
Yeah, the other thing I would like to look at and find out from you, your subtitle of your book involves three very unique methodologies: astrology, empathy, and self-forgiveness. How do those three work together?
That's a really great question that I appreciate. So, astrology is simply the diagnostic point. That my book starts by walking you through some journal prompts to remember times in your life when you felt very loved and also when you didn't feel loved, for example. And it works you up to where you go to the interactive chart I have online or in my book to identify where is Chiron in my birth chart. So Chiron is the diagnostic point to see, okay, this is my area of vulnerability up to and including possible core wounding. And from there, the remediation, the prescription, if you will, is through psychology, taking personal responsibility and utilizing spirituality, as well as I do a statement in the beginning of the book that there's so many different ways to believe in this world. And I said, I really acknowledge your belief system and take what I've written and run with it. Apply your belief system. I use the terms universe. You know, you might use God, you might use nature. If you're an atheist, you know, like take what you believe and apply it to this work. It's flexible. It's like living and alive. And so make it yours versus like shutting it out because it has a word or term that doesn't apply to you. You don't have to apply that to yourself. There's so much. I researched it for almost 4 years. Like there's so much in it that I believe there's something that will connect and help you forgive yourself and have compassion for you first and foremost, and then others. So it's really about our connection and our oneness, and feeling more into that than how separate you are and alone, which causes people to take their own lives, as I've experienced, you know, having people that I love take their lives. I would love for that not to be, because people really feel more love for themselves and value and worth.
So one thing that I've come to realize, that each and every one of us are empathetic at some level, in some way, shape, or form. But my experience is most people have no clue on how to handle their empathy. You know, they just suck up the negative, destructive energy from other people, and it just resonates in their own body and causes all kinds of havoc.
Sure. And so your question about that is
Well, I mean, it was more of
a
an
statement?
observation, you know, really.
Yeah.
But how can people harness their empathy in order to use it the way you're talking about?
I think it's first understanding what is empathy. And empathy, like most things, are on a spectrum. It's not black and white, like you have it or you don't. It's how empathy is being able to put yourself in the experience of others. Like we hear it often, put yourself in someone else's shoes. And we all have an ability on a spectrum to do that. And it's about understanding where you are on that spectrum and honoring that maybe for you, it's so easy to put yourself in someone else's shoes that you kind of really lose yourself. And it's about kind of pulling back, like really empathizing more to yourself and your experience, and possibly setting some boundaries with others or even boundaries with yourself. You know, I'm not going to expose myself to this person or experience because I feel hurt. I don't feel so well when I leave that interaction. You know, and you might not need to say anything. You might just need to call less or text less, for example.
Mhm.
And for other people, it might be harder to put themselves in the experience of others. You see things really kind of through your paradigm only. And it's just important to know that about yourself. Like it's really hard for me to, for example. So you can be honest with yourself in this work, and maybe you want to develop some more empathy and compassion, or maybe you like where you are, and it's just owning that, being authentic and where you are in your personal development.
Isn't that funny? So many people find it hard to be authentic. And people say, what does authentic mean for me? So that's a personal thing. They have to decide.
It is. And I think there are a lot of sanctions. If we really show ourselves like open heart, this is who I am, you really open yourself to be criticized, to be rejected. We see it on social media sometimes, like especially during election season, where people, and I'm not talking about the harsh critical remarks about politics that are, not very sensitively phrased, but somebody just speaking what they like about a candidate. And sometimes others really jump on them and harass them because it's of a different belief. So it's not always safe to just show your true authentic self everywhere. And I think that's okay, because it's most important that you know who your authentic self is. And then you can choose to share and reveal those parts of yourself with the people that you're safe with, that really get you. And maybe with others, you're a bit more, refrained, you're a bit more in your professional self. Like, that's all okay. It's about the self-awareness piece, I think, that's most important.
This is so cool. We are talking to Lisa Tahir, who is a psychotherapist, a psychoastrologist, among many, many certifications. And that brings me to, excuse me, I'm just interested in this. One of your certifications is EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. What is that and how does it work?
Yeah, EMDR has been out for a while, and it helps for people with post-traumatic stress disorder to heal from that. And it's basically talking about how the brain is bilateral, left and right hemispheres. And EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, is a big long word for how your eye movements. If you track my finger, like keeping your head still, moving your eyes left to right, left to right, or it can be a sound bar where you're hearing a sound beep, 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 beep in alternating ears, can cause kind of like a state of relaxation. It's not hypnosis, but it's like a deep sense of relaxation where the brain can start to synthesize and process specific traumatic experiences in a session. And so it works really well with some people, and not for others. So I just like having a different tool to be able to help my clients heal if that's something that's right for them.
Wow. Well, that is really, really interesting. I'm going to have to read more about that. I'm guessing that process helps a person. Maybe you said it's not a hypnotherapy, but it takes you more into a theta brainwave state.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, relaxation. You can even use it when you're feeling anxious. You might pick two objects on the opposite side of a room. And as a self-soothing technique, you can be in the doctor's office and just look from left to right, left to right. And it produces like a calming effect in the body, because you notice your thoughts kind of get a little loose. You're just kind of in this space where it's almost meditative.
That's a great line. Your thoughts get a little loose. Unfortunately, most of us, our thoughts are a little too loose most of the time.
That's funny, Karl.
but that's why you get a little mini lasso and pull them in.
Yes.
I'd like to find out about your practice that's called NOLA therapy. I'm guessing that's because you split time between New Orleans and LA. What do you do with this, and how do you manage two cities like that?
Yeah, you got it, Karl. It is my website, nolatherapy.com, stands for New Orleans, Los Angeles Therapy.com. It's my website, and I do Zoom, FaceTime, and phone sessions from anywhere you may be. And I really love doing sessions. I love working with people. It's a favorite thing to see the aha, like the light bulbs go off inside of someone when they start to soften their criticisms and judgment of themselves and start to feel happier, and depression starts to lift and anxiety starts to kind of melt away. I love working with people And I love living in both New Orleans and Los Angeles. They are my two favorite cities and offer so much. I've learned so much from living in both places and the new people I've met and experiences I'm able to have. So it's been really expanding for me as a person.
Oh, so you can have the best of two worlds, right?
You can.
I like it. And Smelly Cat goes with you the whole way.
Smelly Cat, and I have a little kitten now named Frankie. She comes with me as well. So they both travel. I had a cat named Jiggy for the last 17 years and he passed away earlier this year. So Frankie is my new kitten, and Frankie's taken up, where Jiggy kind of stepped out into the other realm.
Yeah, I've had a number of animals. I've had a couple golden retrievers. I have a cat now, and you love them to pieces, and then they pass away. I asked God if he could make pets live longer. He said he's working on it right now. He's at the
I appreciate that.
He's going to get back to me.
I appreciate that because I miss my Jiggy.
Oh, I am going to ask you the question that I ask almost everyone, every one of my guests through the previous 94 episodes. This is the mission of this show, why I started it. So why do you think the people of the world are now more than ever awakening to all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening?
I noticed that, Karl, when you did the intro, when you made that comment, it kind of like, it stuck with me. And I guess I have a question in my answer. Do you think, I wonder if people have always been waking up, if I'm just more aware of it now since I am. And I wonder what you think about that. I imagine there's always been pockets of people really aware, really in touch. And I feel like for me, the more aware I become, that I'm aware there are others. So I wonder if this has always been happening.
Well, for me personally, years ago, I realized that there was some form of spiritual awakening and expansion of my being going on. And so since I've started this show, I've come to realize that most of my guests just say, because it's time. Now is the time. I've had ascended masters on here in channels. I've had the Syrians and Arcturians on the show coming through beautiful channels on my program. And they just say it is a time of ascension within the human race right now.
Wow.
And so obviously with the technology of the internet, and it is quite possible, I'm guessing that throughout all of human history, there has been this desire to awaken and become more enlightened. But now that we're so interconnected in lightning a quick speed, that we are now merging a little bit more together in our awareness and realizing that the humanity is now awakening because it's time.
I hear you. I believe that.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to hear when it comes from like Othello, the Syrian, who's coming through Christina Hill. So,
yeah. No, that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, one last thing I would like to ask about your podcast. You have a really popular podcast, All Things Therapy. You've had some pretty amazing guests on your show, like Marianne Williamson. That is so cool.
Thank you. That was a highlight. I really appreciate Marianne for taking her time to come on All Things Therapy. She's brilliant and just a mentor to me.
Well, and the podcast itself, I mean, just like mine, they can find it on YouTube and all iTunes and all that. But
exactly.
But I think to be able to get, somebody like you or anybody to come on your show, there's so many podcasts in the world, and especially people in positions like yours, we can be besieged by podcast requests, and it is hard to get some of the bigger names, but it's not necessary, because one thing I like about this show is having people who are going through their own process of awakening and writing books and new evidences of awakening and spirituality. I love giving them the opportunity to come on here, but to have you, Lisa, on has just been phenomenal. How can people connect with you? What's the best way to do that?
Thank you. You're welcome to email me, Lisa, my first name, at nolatherapy.com, or on social media, on Instagram, DM me. I'm found at Nola Therapy as well. And my website, nolatherapy.com. I'm super accessible. So even Google my name and it has my info to reach out. And Karl, I would really love to have you on in the new year to talk about your new book. I want to read it.
Oh yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah, I'll send you a copy and it would be fun. So
I would love that opportunity. Because I love, as you do, like, earlier on, I've done my podcast. March 2023 will be 7 years and over 330 episodes. And at first I thought I really needed to get the big guests, to validate myself. And I learned after having quite a few of those experiences that I really love. My mission is to change consciousness, change awareness, one conversation at a time. And there's so many amazing people doing that. And I love like this, like you and I are doing. It's about the conversation. And you take what works for you and integrate it into your life, and your life gets better. And that's what makes me so happy about being a podcaster.
And also, I think that even you and I, what we practice and do, I think we have no clue the positive, beautiful effect that even just a couple sentences we said here could have on hundreds, if not thousands of people.
Millions.
You'll never know, but
yes, to that.
We've come here to do this,
absolutely,
to make the world a better, loving, happier, healthier place. So
yes.
So Lisa Tahir, thank you so much for being on World Awakenings. What a blessing to have you here.
My pleasure. Thank you, Karl.
This has been another episode of World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with host Karl Gruber, a certified law of attraction life coach. We welcome you to tune in to each and every episode of World Awakenings as we open your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to the truth of all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, and just how much they play an all-important role in our moment-to-moment daily life. Much love and light to you, my friend, and thank you for tuning into World Awakenings.